Hi, everybody. Really lovely to be joining you this evening. I hope you're all not sweltering down in the south of England. It certainly sounds as though we've got some warm weather coming. So I am going to talk to you about our Alladale holiday. And as Kath says, questions at the end, please. I don't know whether you can see me. I can't see me. But what I'm going to be doing, if you can see me, is that I actually have got two screens here. So apologies, I'm going to be switching from one screen to the other. So off we go. So first of all, I do need to thank those of you who've contributed photographs because some of the photographs are mine, but some of them are not. So if you recognize some of your images, thank you very much. And well, I hope you do recognize some of your images. So let's start with this one. This is Alladale Lodge, a beautiful lodge, and it's where we're going to spend 5 nights of the holiday. So the holiday is a week long, but we spend 5 nights here, and the other 2 nights we spend in Inverness at the beginning and end of the holiday. Now then, this I have to say, I think I say this about every holiday because I just love doing this job. I love the holidays that we do. And this is one of my all-time favorites. And I was thinking today, now, why is this one of my favorites? I think every holiday is a favorite for different reasons. And I think probably this holiday is a favorite because it's the time of year, but also there's something really special about staying at Alladale Lodge. And that is often to do with the sort of privilege of being there and being looked after as well as we are by the team that are based there. So the team are the staff that work on the estate, but also we live in the lodge. It's just us. We have 1 or 2 cooks. We have a housekeeper. We have waitresses who serve us our food. So we are treated a little bit like royalty. So it is a holiday that's a bit of a treat. So let me tell you a little bit more about this holiday. So first of all, great views. This is an autumn morning looking out from the lounge in Alladale Lodge. So it's very remote. The views are stunning. We're right out in the middle of nowhere. And as you can see, autumn light, absolutely beautiful. Sad to say, it doesn't always look like this, but when it looks like this, it is particularly beautiful. I thought I'd actually just start with a few quotes from guests that have stayed at Alladale. And as you quickly read through these, a lot of the Alladale holiday is about that sort of really special experience about being somewhere that's beautiful accommodation, fabulous food, and being looked after. But it's also sort of the fact that we're in a place that has got a lot of history, and a lot of people have heard about Alladale in the news. They've heard about it on television programs. It's been featured on Springwatch, and also the Scottish Wildcats. They're a really big part of the holiday and a lot of people's highlights. So I'll come back to that as we continue through the talk. So first of all, where is Alladale? Well, Alladale is quite far north in Scotland. This great big orange arrow points roughly to where Alladale is. So it's about 50 miles north of Inverness. It's in the county of Sutherland. And we start our holiday in Inverness, which is you can hopefully see where Inverness is. I want to point to it, but that's actually no use because you can't see me pointing. So we start in Inverness, so people can make their way to Inverness. They can either fly, they can come on the train, or they can drive. And then we make our way up to Alladale. And the holiday isn't just about Alladale. That's our base, but we do explore further afield, which again, I shall come to as we continue. So you might wonder why we're running a holiday here. Well, I have always been fascinated by Alladale and I suppose the story behind Alladale. It's the place that people talked about reintroducing wolves to the UK. So Alladale's owned by a gentleman called Paul Lister, and Paul Lister is a very wealthy man. His father was responsible for MFI, which many of you will remember. It was a sort of flat pack furniture company, one of the first of its type. And so his father left him a lot of money, and Paul spent some of that money on Alladale, this estate in Scotland. I met Paul at the bird fair. He's quite a character, very charming, quite eccentric, and full of great ideas. And he's been sort of one of the forerunners in sort of the whole story of rewilding. And although he has been hoping to reintroduce wolves to Scotland and to the UK for, I think, 20 years, he's been talking about it. I think it's still quite a distant hope. But many of you will know of Alladale because of Paul Lister. He now runs Alladale as what he calls a wilderness reserve. So it was originally a shooting estate, traditional Scottish shooting estate. And he has spent a lot of time returning the estate to the wilderness that it once was. So there's a huge amount of tree planting and really just sort of trying to take it back to what it originally was. And the time of year that we go is autumn. So we go in sort of like early October. And part of the reason for that is that it is absolutely stunningly beautiful in the Highlands at this time of year. And it's also the time of the red deer rut. So that's one of the big highlights of the holiday, sort of hearing the deer on the hill and tracking them down as we go out for one of our days. It's also a time when a lot of winter visitors are arriving, so we often get huge flocks of pink-footed geese flying over. We have hooper swans arriving, but we sometimes sort of have the tail end of some of our summer visitors too. So we, black caps and some of our waders are still breeding, but we're also looking for sea duck coming in. It's a great time of year for sea duck, lots of waders. It's a really fantastic time of year for wildlife. So never a dull moment, really. I think the first time I did this holiday, I think we've run it 6 times now. I was just amazed. We just kept stumbling upon sort of like thousands and thousands of birds. Just brilliant. Anyway, continuing on. So, as I say, we begin our holiday in Inverness. So we're in autumn. I know sort of everyone will be looking outside and it's still very light. I think we're longest day is this weekend, isn't it? But the days are much shorter in autumn, obviously. And our hotel, which some of you may know, actually, is on the banks of the Bewley Firth. And it's a place that we've been to for dinner sometimes when we've been based at the Premier in Inverness. The restaurant's closed there, so we have taken you to the North Keswick Hotel, which provides an excellent and interesting menu, great food. And this is a place that if you want to drive up, you can leave your car at the hotel and continue the holiday with myself driving and one of my colleagues from Alladale. So the holiday is run by iGuide, but I also guide alongside Ryan, who's a delightful young man who works at Alladale. And so we have the Land Rover from Alladale and one of our trusty VW vans. So that's how the holiday works. First night here. And then this is the hotel. It's a great place actually because we're right on the Firth here, and it's a good place to look out for otters. I have to say we've not been lucky so far, but I think last year one of our guests actually went out the final morning of the holiday when we'd all headed off in different directions, and she did see otter. But it's also a place where you sometimes see the bottlenose dolphins in the Firth. And curlew along the shore. Some of you will recognise yourselves walking along there, back view. So the first day, this looks a very misty morning, a sort of misty autumnal morning. We actually go across to the other side of the Firth, just to a small nature reserve in Inverness. It's a great place to start. Just everybody's getting to know each other, just getting a sort of feel for bird life in this area. And here we've got sort of water on one side, but we've also got a sort of woodland and sort of almost heathland on the other side. So it's a time when we're looking for ring plover, turnstone, red shank, green shank if we're lucky. But also in the woodland, we'll pick up a lot of the sorts of small woodland species, but also it's a great time when we might catch up with birds coming in like redwing and fieldfare. So this is the view from the path that you just saw, looking out across the firth. And obviously this area in front of us, you can see, is very bird rich. It's also one of the best places to see kingfisher. Kingfisher is not a bird we see a lot of up in the Highlands, but this is certainly a good place to spot them. It's also a place where we sometimes get water rail. Along the shore, we can get, it's actually quite a good place for photography as well, because we get quite close to some of the waders. Red shank here. So after that, we leave the reserve and we head to this again, might be a familiar spot to some of you, and some of you will recognise yourselves, I'm sure. This is oh gosh, I forgot what Channery Point. This is where we go and look for bottlenose dolphins. So we try and get the tide right here. The dolphins tend to appear when the tide is coming in, but they'll appear at other times too, or not appear. But that's what we're here for, is to look for the bottlenose dolphins. Good place also to look for divers, long-tailed duck coming in, and the odd remaining tern if we're lucky. It's also quite a good place to stop for lunch because there's tables. And then we go on to Udale Bay. Another familiar spot to some of you, but this time of year really busy. So lots of waders, lots of duck, pink-footed geese coming in, and sometimes if we're lucky we might even pick up a rarity. But a really good place to stop off before we make tracks towards our next destination. But one of the things that's always fascinating on the Cromarty Firth are these oil platforms. And you can see here in the photograph, I mean, actually beautiful light, and I always find these fascinating, that we have the oil platforms coming in often to be dismantled or to be repaired. But these huge yellow things are actually the sort of the bases for wind turbines at sea. So just a bit of a contrast from the rest of our holiday, which is very remote and wildlife based. But this area here, we're actually looking at the Cromarty Firth, is one of the best wintering grounds for sea duck. So great place for wildlife watching. So next stop, we're going to drive, which is about probably an hour's drive from here. We're going to drive towards Alladale. And I always get goosebumps when I arrive there, because as we drive, we're getting more and more remote. And I always kind of feel as though it's a bit of a highlight just arriving at Alladale Lodge. A beautiful drive on a clear day. We get views over the Dornoch Firth, and we're looking out on the way for red deer, hen harrier, and just sort of the anticipation of arriving at Alladale Lodge is fabulous. So this is what we're driving into. You can see a gateway here. This is just below the lodge. Off to our left, beautiful river, and often at this time of year, sadly, there has been a lot of rain, but it does mean that the rivers are really spectacular. The colours as we drive, again, looks very autumnal. It's hard to think about autumn, isn't it, when it's so warm outside at the moment. So the Rose Bay willow herb just sort of turning this almost sort of luminous colour, and fabulous views over again to the Dornoch Firth. So first views of Alladale Lodge, you can see here how remote this is. No other buildings. You can see in the trees there, there's the staff accommodation, but the lodge is just surrounded by hillsides and mountains. So when we arrive at Alladale Lodge, we're greeted by a roaring fire, which I have to say in autumn is just what we need. So roaring fire, cups of tea and homemade cake. This happens every time we arrive back at the lodge, which is always extremely welcome. And then we get a tour of the lodge. We get shown to the dining room, which is where we will have our breakfast and evening meal every night. And then into beautiful bedrooms with incredibly comfortable beds, lovely bathrooms, and then you'll meet Ryan. So Ryan, as I say, is one of the rangers at the reserve, and he's really been a fantastic addition to the holiday. I think he loves coming out with us, and certainly I know that all the guests that have spent time with him have loved being with him. He's passionate about the Wildcats, by the way. And if you get him talking about the Wildcats, it's hard to stop him. So once we've arrived at the lodge, we've settled in, we've had our first meal, and our first day is usually spent on the reserve. So we're going out in two of the vehicles on the estate, and we're going to spend the day being shown around the reserve by the staff there and told all about the story of Alladale, the work that's been done there to return it to its former glory. It's actually a fascinating story. I find it fascinating anyway, that this was a sporting estate, and that the staff here worked on it as a sporting estate, and that they've developed a passion for returning the estate and the land to its former glory. Quite a transition. So here we are, off we go. Some of you will recognize yourselves again. Beautiful drive. All the time, eyes peeled, looking for eagles, looking for anything flying overhead, and listening out for roaring stags. Sometimes we get company. These Highland cows are often fed by the vehicles, so they're keen to be with us as we're driving. You can see it's magnificent scenery. And a lot of these old, you'll probably be familiar with the fact that these old pine trees are referred to as granny pines. There's some magnificent granny pines on the reserve, but sadly not many of them. So most of the reserve has been replanted. There have been, I think, millions of trees planted. You can actually see some small seedlings here. These are probably natural seedlings from this seed source. And one of the things that the reserve is most proud of is the return to nesting golden eagle. This is obviously earlier in the season, but by the time we're there, the juveniles are on the wing and the adults will be flying as well. So we often are really lucky and get good views of eagle. As I say, eyes to the skies. And then we're looking for the red deer. Sorry, this image isn't particularly good, but it's quite distant. I think it was probably taken through a bit of mist. But the atmosphere around the stags when they're rutting is incredible, and they're sort of bellowing across the hillside and across the glen. And Ryan and his colleagues know exactly where to look for them. So there'll be different stags, varying size of antlers, with their groups of hinds. And as you can see here, this hind really isn't looking terribly impressed. Not such a grand stag, this one. Actually, you can see the antlers are a bit smaller than the previous one. Now, one of the highlights of this holiday are our Alladale lunches. So they come in these rather fancy boxes and they think of everything. We get homemade sandwiches, homemade cakes, lots of variety, absolutely delicious. And yes, everybody looks forward to lunch at Alladale. But we take these out with us wherever we go. So we spend 2 days on the reserve during the holiday. This is one of our favourite lunch spots. And when I ask people, those of you who've been on holidays with us before know that we always ask for favourite species of the trip. Now, I have to say that a few people have named Baxter as favourite species of the trip. This is one of the staff, Innes's dog, and he is a particular favourite. He's extremely well behaved, and you can see him sitting there despite the fact that there's plenty of food in front of him. He's quite a character. And he ends up sitting on people's knees in the backs of the vehicles. One of the things that we do when we go out on the reserve, we go to, now then, this is either hydroponics or aquaponics, and I can never remember which one it is, but there are tanks of fish, and their poop sort of feed the plants. So they get fed, and their poop goes through all these water channels and feeds the greenhouse. And a lot of the produce from the greenhouse and outside is what we end up having for lunch and dinner. So back to Alladale Lodge. Bear with me a sec. So one of the things about Alladale is there's been a translocation project to reintroduce red squirrels to Alladale. They'd actually disappeared completely. And those of you who've been on the Alladale holiday will have heard me say this before, that actually the translocation project, which was run by Roy Dennis, many of you, that's a familiar name, the squirrels were taken from the area that I live in. And we were asked if we minded if he took our squirrels, and we said yes, we do mind. Actually, we quite like our squirrels. But one of our neighbours said that they were happy for their squirrels to be taken. But unfortunately, squirrels travel quite a long distance, and our squirrels went too. However, we have now got squirrels back, and Alladale is a great place to see red squirrels and to photograph them. So here we are at the meal table, another highlight. A few familiar faces there. We get extremely well fed, and all our needs are met. So this is the spread. Often the chef comes in, tells us what they've cooked for us. Lots of fresh vegetables, lots of gorgeous meat, but vegetarians are catered for as well. I can vouch for that. Oh, this is obviously not for vegetarians. We get lots of venison and lots of fresh fish. And if we're very lucky, we get the Northern Lights. This year we were out looking at the Northern Lights in our pajamas. So I can't promise the Northern Lights, but we certainly had a pretty good show out there because there's no light pollution. So we have 2 days out on the reserve. We go out in the vehicles, and then we spend a bit more time on foot, just exploring. And it's a great time of year to look for fungi. And the colours are beautiful as well. This is blaeberry, bilberry, just turning that gorgeous autumn red. And then the aspen are absolutely beautiful. I'm afraid I just didn't manage to capture this, but it's this gorgeous butter yellow, and they're just incredible. It's not always the best of weather, but still smiling, even though it's a bit of a grim day. And of course, we do get sunshine too. And we're really lucky. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a tawny owl in amongst the trees here. This was a really lucky find, actually. It's lots of small birds buzzing about and making a heck of a racket. And we sort of peered into this tree, peered in, what's in there, what's in there. And eventually we spotted this owl. I think it spotted us too. And every time we go past this tree, we always look for it, but obviously we haven't seen it again. So lots of beautiful fungi. This orange peel fungus is absolutely beautiful, and hedgehog fungus here on the left. This was a highlight. I think this was favourite place of the trip. Was this? We stopped on a bridge and took photographs of these aspen. Absolutely stunning. So looking at the valley with these trees just sort of rustling in the wind, absolutely beautiful. And these are just some of the places that we explore. You can see lots of water in the river. This is a salmon fishing river. Bit of history too. Interesting church. There's a story to this, which if you come on the Alladale holiday, you'll hear all about. Often seeker deer to look for here, another species of deer. It's also a time of year when you get lots of rainbows. I think we had rainbows every day, and they just got more and more beautiful. One of the highlights of the holiday is a visit to the Scottish Wildcats. So Scottish Wildcats, many of you will know, numbers that have diminished largely, well, partly due to hunting. So they've been heavily persecuted, but also the small numbers that remain have interbred with our feral cats. And so there are various locations where there's been breeding programs to try and improve and increase the numbers of Scottish wildcats. And one of those locations is here at Alladale. And Ryan, who joins us on the holiday, it's his baby, and he's got lots of stories to tell us about these amazing creatures. They look like pussycats to start with, but you soon realize they're not. This one looks particularly ferocious. Amazing animals, and definitely not pussycats. Sorry, lots of pictures of the lodge. It's just so beautiful. So I think I said at the beginning of the talk that this trip is not just about being at Alladale. We go to two other locations as well. And one of the locations is indicated by the orange arrow. So it's sort of this far northeast coast. I think lots of people think about the northeast coast being sort of Aberdeen way, but this is even further north. And there's some beautiful small towns here, Dornoch being one of them. And some beautiful beaches which are great for waders, and it's a good place to look for sea duck as well. So this nicely captured ringed plover, and I think there's a sanderling in there, and if I'm not mistaken, a dunlin too. A couple of sanderling actually. Sorry, not such a great image, I have to say. Looks great when it's small, but long-tailed duck, one of my all-time favourites. Chris Packham loves long-tailed duck. They're just so beautiful. And we do stand to get some great views of long-tailed duck. Not always easy to photograph because they're often quite far out, but watching them all dive in all dive together is just fabulous. They all kind of disappear together in synchronicity. I got it there. And then they all pop up again. Absolutely beautiful birds. As, of course, that eider. Again, one of my favourites. And we often get great views of eider and also just listening to them out on the water. We also called in last year at Dunrobin Castle, which is rather spectacular. Just in passing, actually, we just had time to take a look here. And we found a great location to look for dipper. These dipper actually spend time in the seawater, just on the edge of the shore. Really unusual. I've never seen dipper doing that before. So there are all these just little corners where in the sort of small towns, fishing towns from the past along this northeast coast where we bump into dipper, sanderling, sometimes purple sandpiper, and then sort of mixed waders also. Sometimes we are looking out for otters as well. But we often look and we don't see. But sometimes we look and we do see. Spotted by Penny. She said, "Oh, what's that? Is it a duck?" Or there was some confusion about what we were looking at, and absolutely amazing. These otters really close by, and a great image. And we watched them for ages. Absolutely beautiful. Some glorious beaches and often big stretches of sand, all to ourselves. We also go to Dornoch, a bit of culture, a bit of time for you to go into the museum, go into the cathedral, and also a bit of time to wander along the beaches. Absolutely exquisite. And then we have another day out. We have another day out where we go up to the far north to Inverness, which is one of the most northerly points in the UK. Some of you may have been to Inverness before. Balnakeil Beach, absolutely beautiful location. But it's also a great place to look out for long-tailed duck and divers. And the drive there must be one of my all-time favorite drives. Quite a long drive, but the scenery is absolutely beautiful, and there's every chance of catching up with both golden and white-tailed eagle on the drive. When we get there, we're always delighted. You can see our lunch. Everybody's obviously waiting for lunch here, all smiles. And then this is the beach. And sometimes it looks like this, and sometimes it looks like this. A stunning location, a great place to do some birding, and a great place to have lunch. The scenery in this northern coast is absolutely beautiful. As you can see, another lunch spot, just on the other side of the car park, and a different group. But everybody smiles at Balnakeil Beach. It is just a stunning location, and it's quite an effort to get there. It's also quite an effort to get back because it's a long drive, but again, absolutely beautiful, absolutely spectacular. Great chances to see golden eagles. On one of the days we drove this, we actually saw so many golden eagles, we stopped looking at them, which I'm really ashamed to say. Hooper swans, they're just arriving, and there's some great places to look at them in some of the lochans en route. Beautiful scenery, again, really remote. And one time we were really lucky and we saw waxwing. How on earth Richard captured this through the window of the van in pretty difficult weather, I'm absolutely astounded. But we did have a small group of waxwings, so they're just coming in at this time of year. And here's one of our golden eagle sightings here with a raven. And a young white-tailed eagle here, which I will tell those of you, if you come on the Alladale holiday, more about how this one was spotted. But looking pretty fed up and pretty bedraggled, this young fellow. Now then, one of the things about Alladale is that leaving is not what we want to do. But leave we must. We are extremely well looked after by the team here. And so I think we probably all feel as though we've been spoiled. So we get waved off and head back to Inverness. Last picture of the lodge. But we have another thrilling day ahead of us. Now, I know a lot of people are not that mad on whiskey, but actually visiting whiskey distilleries is always really fascinating to me. So we go to Glenmorangie Distillery. Many of you will have heard of Glenmorangie. It's a worldwide whiskey, but it's actually a really small and intimate distillery. So we spend about an hour looking around the distillery, and we have a whiskey tasting. If you don't like whiskey, it's fine. We get bottles to take it away, and I'm very happy to help out if you don't know anybody who likes whiskey. But the other thing about this distillery is it's right on the edge of the Dornoch Firth, and there's some superb bird watching here. We discovered this totally by chance, but some absolutely fabulous bird watching. It's also a place where they've reintroduced oysters. So we have a tour around the distillery, and then we drive out to Tarbot Ness. Tarbot Ness, a remote lighthouse, and this is actually a great place for rare migrants to stop off. But we often stop off here because the one or two birds we pick up that we wouldn't see elsewhere: yellowhammer, tree sparrow. Usually good chances of stone chat. Also a great place to watch gannets. We've sometimes got quite stuck here because we just get absorbed in watching the gannets. It's just like watching them diving is a bit addictive. Spectacular lighthouse. And then we've got somewhere else that we go to. Oh, sorry, that's my phone making noise. I'm just going to switch that off. Excuse me. We go from here to the other side of the Cromarty Firth to an area called Nig. And this is another fabulous location for wader watching and wildfowl watching. It's also a place where we've often done our final bird list, actually, because it's just such a lovely place. You can see here in the evening light, absolutely stunning. It's also a place where we get huge flocks of pink-footed geese. We've been really lucky with these flocks flying over. Quite spectacular sight when you see thousands and thousands of pink-footed geese taking off. But the end of the holiday is coming and we must head back. Often followed by beautiful sunsets. But back we go to our hotel in Inverness, just as the light's fading. And here we are, our final evening, our final meal together, and a chance to reminisce. So thank you